Everybody, hello, welcome to my webinar today. I'm Amanda Chadwick and I'm a speaker on employment law and health and safety, a blogger and also a writer on employment law. Today I'm bringing you a webinar on the benefits of outsourcing HR for small businesses. We work in conjunction and part of the largest HR consultancy in the UK, which is a family-run firm set up on the back of a tribunal over 30 years ago. At Employers Direct, we offer a free HR advice service for small businesses, and the advice is commercially focused to help you grow your business and give you the right advice for the problems that you're experiencing as a small business. We do only advise businesses, so we don't give advice to employees. We currently, at Employers Direct, take about 2,000 advice calls per week. The advice we give is also limited to statutory legislation, although we can point in the direction for anything else. And we're an alternative really to using bodies such as ACAS and Citizens Advice. So let's get straight into this webinar today and let's talk about what are the benefits of outsourcing HR, but also at the same time, let's talk about some of the tricky problems that you do have and what you don't understand. So we're going to start with managing policies and procedures. And so the questions I would ask you when it comes to employment law is, are you just ticking the boxes? So somebody's told you as a small business you've got to get contracts in place. They've said get them in place because it's the law, and they've said you can't run a business without them, get them in place. Where do you go? Do you just go on the internet and print them off? Do you ask your friend who's a solicitor in conveyancing? Do you ask somebody who knows their stuff that works as an HR expert? So what I would say to you is never copy somebody's contract. What you should do is work with your own that are tailor-made to suit your business, because everybody's requirements in employment law are totally different, and also the requirements of the business are totally different. And so don't just tick the boxes though, tick the boxes and understand why those policies and procedures are there. There's no point having a policy in if you don't know how to use it. So do you understand the policies have you got? And when did you update your policies and procedures? Was it because somebody said, oh, you should do it annually? Are you sat there listening to me now and you haven't actually updated your policies for, since the start of your business? And if you did update them, why did you last update them? Was it a trend? Did something happen within the business? How did you do it? And who is responsible for checking and keeping up to date with what you've got written down anyway? And we're going to cover this in a moment. We're going to talk about some of those policies and procedures in a minute, and the reasons people get them wrong. So the first mistake that employers make are that they don't issue a statement of main terms. And if you're listening to me and you haven't got a clue what I'm talking about, and most people, when I speak to them and say a statement of main terms, ordinary business owners don't have a clue what I'm talking about. And if I put it in layperson's terms for you, it's if I came for an interview with you and I sat in front of you and then you offered me the job, I would ask you certain questions about that job. These certain questions, as a human being, would help me run my family life. Where am I working? How much am I getting paid? What are the holidays like? What are the hours like? What are the perks and benefits? And this is my personal contractual terms with you, and this is what we call a statement of main terms. Just a reminder for you, why employers make mistakes here is they don't bother to issue one. They don't actually write down the personal contractual terms applicable to that employee, and it is a legal requirement to issue one. You should be issuing them within 8 weeks of somebody's start date, but listen to me here, I have a lot of experience. You issue it from the minute you offer them the job. There is a penalty for not issuing it if you end up in a tribunal, and the penalty is if you don't issue it, you end up in a tribunal. The average payment at this moment in time is round about £1,400, which I think's a lot of money just for not issuing a document. And also, it lets me know where I stand with you, how much I am getting paid, where I'm working, and hours, and I can't see why you wouldn't issue them. Now, when you outsource HR, lots of companies will help you write that standard document and help you fill in the missing bits, so you don't have to struggle. Remember as well, later on in employment, it's very, very important if you've issued a statement of main terms, that when there's a requirement to change somebody's statement of main terms, later on in employment you have to change it. The biggest change that we find is when somebody's reducing their hours or maybe going part-time or requesting flexible working. We always remind our client that they must change the statement of main terms. It's easily forgot. But can you imagine if you're working with a company, they have part-time staff, and they're still on the terms and conditions they were when they were full-time. You know, you've got to change it. You must have a reminder system in place that reminds you to change it. And also there is a process you have to go through when you make the changes. And remember, there's different statement of main terms for different staffs. So different people get paid different wages, work different hours, and also a reminder here for you as well, whilst you're listening to me, to always check your workforce status to see whether somebody is full-time, part-time, you know, temporary worker. Make sure you get the right statement of main terms in place for the right person. So where do employers make mistakes aside from written the statement of main terms? Well, the first thing I'm going to have to say to you is the handbook, not having written standards and expectations in place. That's the handbook, okay? These are your rules. If I came for an interview, this is what you'd say to me. Amanda, you want the job? These are my rules. This is the handbook. I expect you to read that, to understand it, and to sign to say that you've read it. And in that handbook, okay, an employment law company, when you outsource, can help you write that and tailor make it. And in that handbook, you would have the statutory rights. Some of them you'd have grievance procedures, disciplinary procedures, but what you would have in there are your rights, your rules. You know what? You're running a business at the end of the day. It's your business. You can have what you want in there as long as it's considered reasonable. And we can help you see what is reasonable and what's not. And it's about taking control, isn't it? The minute I walk through your door on day one as an employee, I've got over 80 rights. What we would like to do is create rights for the employer, for HR, for managers and trustees, so they get the control back in their business and they know which step to follow, and the employment law can help you do that. Expecting your staff to be mind readers. Imagine you're at a tribunal and you're saying there's a rule that's in place, but it's not written down, and the other person's representative says, my client is not a mind reader. Had they known we're going to get in trouble for this, they wouldn't have done it. Where does it say they're going to get in trouble for it? And you've lost your tribunal. Don't expect your staff to be mind readers. Put things in place that work for you, but tell your staff why they're going to get in trouble. Not realising there's a legal requirement for certain rules and procedures as well is where people fall down. Not realising that you have to have written disciplinary rules, written disciplinary procedures. You have to have a grievance procedure in place. And now with the Pension Act, you've now got to mention in your handbook how people opt in, opt out, the rules for pensions, how you roll it out, and your statement of main terms has got to include the pension provider. So if you don't realise there's a legal requirement for certain rules and procedures, you're definitely going to fall down. Not formalising what already exists. So you've got rules in place, but you haven't written them anywhere. Formalise them, and they will go in the handbook. It makes sense anyway. Let me tell you now, if you end up in a tribunal as an employer, you haven't got things written down, it works in the employee's favour, doesn't it? Because they can say whatever they want about you. So get things written down where you've already got rules in place, but they're not written down anywhere. And then not having inductions. So there's no point me talking on this webinar today if you aren't going to listen to what I'm saying. You've got to have inductions where you introduce your staff to the rules you have in place and you get them to sign to say that they understand it. And training. You know, if you're training your staff, don't just give them the training document. Write on the training document that they read it, they understood it, they understood the training, and then you've got a defence document later on. And education of staff. Listen, we all like a joke, don't we? I love a joke. I'm from the Benny Hill era, so I absolutely love a joke. You know, don't chase me around the desk, but, you know, I like a joke. And at the end of the day, you know, different people work in different businesses, and I know when a joke is a joke, but I also know when somebody's being horrible. So what we have to do is we have to educate our staff. Because you, as the employer, as the trustee, as the owner of the business, you have vicarious liability here. So it's up to us to educate our staff and say, look, that's harassment, that's bullying, this is equal opportunities, look out for signs for mental health, look out for signs for sickness, and it saves us money by educating our staff as we go along. And when you outsource an HR company, quite often they can help you with motivation, incentives, managing sickness, managing absence, managing the education of your staff, and rolling out things so you don't miss that point off. Lots of people I speak to, and I do have a lot of clients that I go and see face to face, they're scared of changing what isn't broken. They're saying, well, I haven't had a problem, why would I put policies and procedures in place? It's what we call a preventative measure. It's like taking vitamins to prevent you getting that cold. We're putting things in place that you can turn to and that will defend you if you do have an issue. You know, and that is why you have policies and procedures and you fall back on them. And also the other area where employers make mistakes is copying somebody else's policies and procedures. Worked with a lady that's got a children's wear shop, and she said to me, why am I giving my staff a week's paid carers leave? I said, you tell me. Why are you? So where did you get your contracts from? So she said, well, what I did, she said, my husband works for the council and I copied his contracts because they're obviously very good, aren't they? Yeah, they're very good, but they give you staff a week's paid carers leave where there's no legislation that says they should have it. And what you've done is copied the perks and benefits from another company and the rules. And the other thing that she had in there was 6 months full pay. How the hell can a small business cope with paying all their staff 6 months full pay each time they're off? But the other thing was, all her staff were taking the week's paid carers leave. So don't copy somebody's policies and procedures. What you need to do is create your own and look at your business, look at your trends, you know, look at the personality of your business, look at where you've had problems in the past, look at the rules that aren't written down, and let's condense them and put them in this handbook and make them work for you. Make sure they're tailor-made. Other areas where employers make mistakes: emotion. You know, you've got somebody working for you, you don't really like them, and when they say, shove your job, I'm not working for you anymore, it's easy, isn't it, to just say, I didn't like them anyway, let them go. But you'll fall foul of a tribunal. You've got to know the next steps to follow. You've got to know the letter you've got to write. I'm giving you time to reflect and calling you back in for a meeting. An HR company can help you write that letter. You ring them the minute you have a problem. You don't leave it till afterwards, and they can stop you having a tribunal in the first steps. So, and also consistency, making one rule for one person and one for another, having favourites. You know, you've got to be consistent in your business. You might have, let's have a look at a legislation here where people fall down. Dependence leave. You have somebody working for you that's 16. They've had a baby, they've got a baby, and they're having time off with a child one day. You have a woman that works there that's 45, me, and I've got a child. I've been there for 10 years and I have time off with my child. You pay me, but you don't pay the 16-year-old. That's age discrimination. So we've got to get it right. You've got to be consistent. The same for sickness, paying one person and not paying another. That's where you're going to fall down. That's where you're going to have problems. Be consistent with every decision that you make, and don't make rules up as you go along. Issuing job descriptions. This is where other areas where employers make mistakes. You've got to issue a job description because people that are then aware of their duties, their role, and it's also a benchmark for appraisals. So if you don't issue a job description, there isn't any benchmark. And you need help when you write a job description. You need to know what rules and tasks need to go in there. Not writing personal specifications. This is the document that you would use after you've advertised a job, or before. You'd advertise a job, you'd write down the skills and attributes you're looking for a person, and that would be your personal specification. And then when you get your CVs and application forms in, you now can get the right person for the right job. How about writing adverts incorrectly? Let me tell you a couple of funny stories here. Okay, I live in North Wales. Near where I live, there's a private airline. Private airports, actually part of the Airbus family, and they run private jets from there. And I got the local paper last year, and in the local paper there was an advert. This is true. The advert said, attractive young woman required, must be of slim build and flexible. Don't know what the flexible was about, by the way. Must be flexible and be at beck and call of private airline. That's genuine. That's a genuine advert. They might as well just said size 8, blonde, you know, available at all times, etc. Now that advert is completely wrong because it's sexist. It screams out that it's all completely wrong. But people make mistakes. Another advert where I live. You're going to think we're all bonkers around here because the adverts, I laugh at them. They don't offend me. I find them hilarious. Near where I live, there's a set of shops, okay? So we've got beauty salon, takeaway, co-op, another beauty salon, and then there's a post office. And when I pop to the chippy that's next to the post office, quite often by the way, I like to read the adverts that are in the paper shop window. I find them hilarious. First of all, I'm never going to buy a second-hand mattress of you, so I don't know why people advertise them. But secondly, I like to read the jobs that people put in the post office. And this is one that I saw recently. It's for a local car showroom. It says, retired gent required for local car showroom for weekend work. Now, straight away I'm thinking that's absolutely ridiculous. A retired man, why is a retired man why do they need a retired man to work in a car showroom? And I know where they're coming from. I know what they visualise, and in fact I know that car showroom. In fact there's 3 in Broughton, and 2 have had tribunals, so there you go. Keeping up with the times, I'd say. They could teach me a hell of a lot about business, but I could teach them a hell of a lot about employment law, and one of them is getting adverts right. I know what you want, you visualised it, but what if a woman like me might have worked, I haven't, but might have worked as the top salesperson for Ford, and I've just taken time out to look after my kids. I've had children and babies, and I've taken time out. And my husband, what if he worked for Airbus and has just come home today and said, I've had my hours cut? And he says, look, you'll have to get a job at the weekend because we can't afford to pay the mortgage and the bills. And I've said, right, I'll just go and get some chips. I'll have a think about this and we'll talk about it when we come home. And then I go to the chip shop, see the advert in the paper shop, salesperson required for local car showroom, weekend work. I've not looked at the sales retired gent, completely blanked that. And I thought, thank you, that is brilliant. Weekend work, car showroom. I used to work at Ford. And I pick up the phone and I ring up and I say, I'm ringing about the job in the post office window. And the man says, are you blind, love? It says retired gent. And I'd get him for that as well. So blind, retired and gent. 3 of them, I'd get him for all of those. But at the end of the day, I can see what he wants for the job, but he's just missed out on a golden opportunity by advertising and actually not thinking about what he's writing down. So we can't discriminate in an advert, remember that, unless we can objectively justify it. And it's very far a few cases where you can discriminate. So with an HR company, they can help you outsource that. They can help you write the adverts. They can make sure you get it right. And they can help you with the personal specifications and the job descriptions. They can help you create that paper trail that you might not be thinking of doing. You know, when somebody asks you for part-time working and just saying yes instead of writing it down, they help you create that paper trail by teaching you to write letters that they can use and you can use as defence documents. They let you know what the ACAS code of practice is rather than just guessing. They help you get the written rules for investigations, disciplinary grievance and appeal procedures in place. And remember, just making one mistake can end up in a tribunal. You know, we help make it simple, and we also consider those suspension costs that apply to you when you've suspended somebody on full pay. We try and make it simple and snappy and get it done straight away. Employers may not take complaints seriously, but when you've got people involved working with you, they can let you know that complaints should be taken seriously. Even if somebody's saying, I don't like what somebody's saying to me or the way somebody's treating me, you should take that complaint seriously because you don't want a tribunal later on. So what I've done on this page is I put a photograph up of me, so you can print it off and scare burglars off for later on after this webinar finishes. But I've put my photo up because I want you to look at me for a second. And what we do is we judge people within the first few minutes of meeting somebody. So what I've given you is me as your new candidate. I've applied for a job with you. Goodness help you, by the way. You'll never get any work done. So here we go. This is me. I've come for the interview and you've given me the job. So what do you know about me? And I'm going to tell you a little bit about me in a moment, just so that from now on you take employment law seriously. And do you know, how long does it take you to interview me? Little bit of a fact here. In most businesses, people hold interviews, and on average they're 15 minutes. So 15 minutes before you make that decision to take me on. And guess what? People never, hardly anybody chases up references. Surprised? I'm not. So look at that photograph, okay? I'm going to tell you now, these are all the things you can't tell by looking at me, and you can't ask me at an interview. I'm a working mother of 4 children. I've 2 grandchildren, and I've got another one on the way. I'm not pregnant, but I've got another grandchild on the way. What you also can't tell by looking at me is that I'm deaf. I've got completely no hearing in my right ear, and I've only got 60% in my left ear, which is deteriorating. And eventually I probably won't have any hearing later on in life. I have a debilitating illness that you can't see by looking at me. I take medication 3 times a day. And in fact, I might have a disability and an illness, but I've had 1 day sick in 12 years. I don't want a medal, but I'm just pointing out, on paper, I might not look employable, but you know what? I am. Okay, also, here we go. In the 80s, for people that say a woman can't do a man's job, I'm a very strong woman. I used to be the 3rd strongest woman in the UK. I used to powerlift. I don't anymore, but if you ever want a washing machine lifting, I can do that. So, also, I've got 7 brothers and sisters, okay, and I'm telling you this for a reason. I've got a sister called Nadine who's an activist, an artist, and a Buddhist, anything with an ist on, most argumentative person I've ever met, and I wouldn't like to be marooned on a desert island with her because all we do is argue. She's married to a man from Thailand, and they're both strict Buddhists. My sister Lulu is incredibly hardworking. She is married to a man who is his family's from Sierra Leone. He's been in the same job since he left school. He's now 45. They're strict Catholics. My great-uncle's a Monsignor in Manchester. My natural maiden name is Gallagher. My brother is called Frank Gallagher. My dad's called Frank Gallagher. And my granddad's called Frank Gallagher. And my brother Frank Gallagher lives on a shameless estate in Manchester, and he's a postman. I've got a traveller brother. I've got an adopted Indian brother who's Hindu. And in the 80s and 90s, when my dad was in the Royal Marines, my mum and dad chose to foster many kids. So I've got an extended family with about 80 or 90 foster brothers and sisters of all different races, creeds and colours and religions. I'm telling you all this for a reason. You've just taken me on, as I said to you, a 15-minute interview. You know nothing about me. You don't know about my health. You don't know about my disability, you don't know about my family life, and I have to be honest with you, you can't ask me about any of that. But I walk into your business today and 2 people are talking about something that offends me. I've got a very thick skin. You want to come to one of our family parties, we have a right laugh. But I walk into your company and 2 people are maliciously saying something. At what point did you show me your reporting procedure to sort problems out within your workplace, regardless of the size of your company? I walk in, I walk out, and then I say discrimination, indirect discrimination, or whatever. What I'm looking for is protection here for employers and trustees and managers and HR. I'm giving you a handbook now. And in that handbook, I've just written you an equal opportunity policy, her bullying and harassment policy, and a reporting procedure. And I'm going to show it Amanda Chadwick on day 1. I'm going to have an induction with her. I'm going to get her to sign to say she's read and understood it. And in there, it's going to say we take complaints seriously. Race, religion, religious belief, no belief, environmental belief, political opinion, affiliation, marital status, disability, gender, gender reassignment, age and sexual orientation. The list is in there. So Amanda Chadwick now can't walk out of that company and go and make a complaint. She's now going to take the route where she knows you take complaints seriously and say, I'm offended. So we've got to protect you against people that might make malicious claims but genuinely might have a complaint that they want to make. So we don't know anything about somebody when we take them on. So when I talk about my health, seriously, you can't tell that I'm not poorly, but you can't tell that I have a disability. You can't tell by looking at me. And I don't want people to see that I have a disability because I manage it quite well. So I have to protect you though. So when you take somebody on, and you offer them the job, you should actually be issuing a health questionnaire, and that's your first defence document. You're going to ask me, do you have a disability? Are you taking medication? Are you having counselling? And you don't issue that when before you've offered them the job with the application form. You issue that when you've offered them the job, because otherwise it's illegal to do. So there's a top tip for you. what we're also going to do in the handbook is we're going to tie that in with a health statement, because people's health and disability and pregnancy can change throughout their career with you. So we're going to issue that form on day one, and if Amanda Chadwick decides to lie on that, then we've got a defence document going forward if she has an accident. Also in the handbook, which she's going to sign on day one, it's going to say if your medical condition changes, if you have an accident, if you have a disability, if you're taking medication, you're having counselling, you're pregnant, you have to let us know at the earliest stage. And that way what you've done is you've delegated, or we have delegated, responsibility and authority to the employee. So that's the statement there, because people's medical conditions do change. And then going forward, I'm going to use that when somebody, I'm going to use that if somebody's saying I dismiss them because they've got a disability and they haven't told me, I'm going to use that statement to protect them, to protect me. You know, I didn't know you had a disability, yet in your handbook it says you have to tell us if you have one. You've never told us. And also the health questionnaire that you issue when you take me on is also a defence document. And let me give you an example of that. You take an employee on to work in a kitchen as a kitchen porter. They fill the health questionnaire in and they answer no to everything. You have that medical statement in the handbook, they've signed that also, and you've had a full induction. That employee suffers from epilepsy, but you don't know because they haven't told you. They then pick up a pan of boiling hot water and then they have an epileptic attack whilst holding it. They then burn themselves quite severely and they're in hospital for several months. If you've got the right documents in place, let me tell you now, you've got defence. You may have an investigation, but it's unlikely you'll be prosecuted because you can prove that you invested in employment law and health and safety from day one. I used a health questionnaire. I gave it Amanda Chadwick when she started the company. She's obviously lied because she's not said that she's got epilepsy, and actually on there it does say it's a legal document. We also tied that up in the handbook. She's never told us that she's got a disability or suffered from epilepsy. Had we known that, we would have, considered those facts when we offered her the job. So you can see how it works, how these documents work. So what should you have issued when you offered me the job? When you offered me the job, the statement of main terms, job offer letter, and the health questionnaire. And remember, when you talk to me about stuff in the interview, it's handy to have standard questions that you ask me, and an outsourced HR department can help you with that. What about your starter checklist? Are you checking if they've got the right to work in the UK? Because you should be. And don't just check people with a foreign sounding name, a different colour skin. Check everybody, otherwise that's discrimination. Also, remember here, if you're employing a legal worker and you haven't checked that they've got the right to work in the UK, the fine is just doubled from £10,000 to £20,000. So, also, do I have any other jobs? That's really relevant because the working time regulations is the main complaint in tribunal. That's not just hours or holidays or breaks. That's also working in other businesses. So let me give you an example here. I work for you for 40 hours a week, but I work as a taxi driver. You need to know about that job. Okay, because you as the main employer, you're responsible for getting the hours of the other job and adding them to the hours that I work for you. And I could have exceeded and breached the working time regulations. So we're going to protect you now by putting a term and condition in place that says, in the handbook, if you want to work elsewhere, please apply in writing. That way you find out about any other jobs that I'm doing. If they don't tell you and you don't know, don't worry about following them around and, private detective thing. Don't follow them around, wait till they tell you. So have that term and condition in place. What if you don't like me? Have you ever taken somebody on and you've had them there a few weeks and you really can't stand them, or they're not doing the job they should be doing, or your clients don't like them? We recommend in your handbook a suitability clause within the probationary period that allows you the control to easily dismiss somebody within the first few weeks and months, and also allowing you not to go through disciplinary and capability procedures. We automatically write that into people's handbooks to give them the control. And what if you catch me stealing? What if I work for you and I'm stealing something? What if I work for you and I'm smoking, I'm taking drugs? What if I work for you and I'm doing any of those? Or what if I'm using my mobile phone and I shouldn't be? Well, One thing I'd recommend that you should have in place in any business is a search policy. That's a policy where you can control the fact that what you can have is you can control a situation that you might have not been able to control had you not had that policy in place. Usually, if you catch somebody stealing, they're not going to turn around and go, oh, there you go, it's just a joke. They're going to say to you, I'm not emptying my pockets. You're not searching me. So if you've got a search policy in place, it allows you the control back. It says, I have the right to search you wherever you are working for me. I have the right to search your vehicle if it's parked on my premises. I have the right to search my car if it's parked on the premises. I have the right to search your locker, and these searches are random and do not imply suspicion in relation to any individual concerned. The key here is somebody's unlikely to let you search them, okay? And it's easier to dismiss somebody for refusal of a search than it is to prove they were stealing, taking drugs, smoking, using alcohol, or using their mobile phone when they shouldn't have been. So my recommendation here is to have a search policy in place. A lateness policy is something else that you might want to consider. Again, it saves you money. It's about growth nowadays. It's not about recession. It's about making your business grow. And if somebody's always late off the break or starting, it can cost them business an absolute fortune. So having a lateness policy in place, which is applicable to you. Remember, I'm giving you an overview on law today. So some businesses say, oh, I just put my glasses down and they're never late again. Some businesses say, I want a really good lateness policy, and you have it tailor-made to your requirements. If you're more than 5 minutes late, I deduct 15 minutes pay. If you're more than 15 minutes late, I deduct half an hour's pay. If you're more than half an hour and you haven't even bothered ringing me, I deduct an hour's pay. And in fact, actually, I send you home without pay at all because I've got somebody else to fill your job in. It's what works for you, okay? It's what your requirements are. So, what about those people that lose shutter keys? What about those people that damage vehicles? You know, I worked with a company, and it was a haulage company, and when I spoke to them about damaging stuff, they said, you know, we've got a huge problem with breakages, people just throwing boxes in. We've got a huge problem with going to the local garage to have our lorries repaired and not going through our insurance company, and we never claim the money back. And so we wrote a wastage policy that allowed them to claim the money back off their employees for damaging stuff, damaging vehicles and losing keys. And guess what? We saved that haulage company £27,000 in 1 year. A hell of a lot of money. So let's get a wastage policy in place. And then we could also use it if we've got a malicious employees as well. Restaurant, Llandudno, North Wales. Kitchen, restaurant staff, it was a kitchen, it was the chef, junior chef. He thought he was going to be made redundant, and in fact he was not getting on with the manager anyway. So he shoved paper towels down the sink, and he turned on the taps, and he flooded the kitchen. And he left it overnight. Now, the sad thing is, it's never the director, is it, or the manager that will clean that kitchen up. So it's his work colleagues that ended up cleaning up that. The second thing is, a wastage policy allows that company to claim back for the damage and loss of business because it's written into the contract. And remember, top tip here, one of the complaints in tribunal that we see all the time is illegal deductions from salary. You can only deduct money from somebody's salary if you've got a written agreement to do that. That's overpayment of wages, overpayment of holidays, that's deducting for damage and stuff. You've got to have a written agreement for this. You can't just do it, you know. So, what if somebody's forever texting or talking on the mobile? You know, I think I'm talking about my husband here. I have to be honest with you. Or, what if you remember the 80s? Do you remember the 80s? I know when I started work when I was 12 on a market stall. And mobile phones didn't exist in those days. And when I first started my first proper job, when I was 16, you know, when the only time that there was an emergency call was my mother asking me what I wanted for tea. And it was a landline that she rang, never a mobile, okay? And then when I went on to have children, you know, there was always a landline that people could ring in emergencies. We managed without mobiles. So if you get that excuse saying, I need my mobile phone on all the time because I've got a parent I'm looking after, I've got a child, you know, tell them about the 80s. Tell them when the mobile phones didn't exist. So what we're going to have is we're going to have a mobile phone policy for personal use, and we're going to have a mobile phone for their business use. If I'm giving you a business mobile phone, these are the rules. Don't text personal messages because we can read them, so don't be surprised if we can read them. Don't send photographs of yourself naked to our, to your partner, and then it ends up in one of our clients' hands. It might create more business, who knows, it might not. But at the end of the day, you shouldn't be doing it. We may dismiss you for it. So what you need to have is a policy for mobile phone use, for personal, and mobile phone policy for work use, for work mobiles, excessive use, clawing back money, texting in work, etc., personal use of the works mobile. And then we know where we stand, because it's not very nice when there's a surprise and an employee gets in trouble because they didn't know that they couldn't do that. So let's get the rules in place at the very beginning. And also, in some businesses, they say you can't use a mobile phone at all. And in some businesses, the law screams higher than what their requirements are. And it says, for example, in an Alderhay hospital, you can't use your mobile phones if you go on a children's ward. My granddaughter was in there, and when I went to visit her, you could not. They'd say, can you switch your mobile phone? It's illegal to use your mobile phone there, because it's children. So if you're running a nursery here, if you're running a business where like the MOD or care, it's a requirement not to have your mobile phone on. It's a strict rule, so get it written down. And also, the other thing is, you might want to have a good sickness policy that says you can't text in rather than phoning. You've got to ring in, not text in. You can't do that. And then also, remember, when we spoke about emotion, other things where people go wrong is shoving your job, getting the letters written, and then also putting that on Facebook. Saying they've had an argument at work, putting it on Facebook, being emotional. Luckily, I don't have Facebook, but what I can say is that I've got a daughter that's got Facebook. I've got a son that's got Facebook. So out of 4 of my children, 3 of them have got Facebook. And I can tell you the eldest one is completely and utterly addicted to it. People say to me, I didn't know that happened. And I'm saying, how do you know? And they say, well, it's on Facebook. People post their personal life on Facebook. We know everything about you. So you can bet your bottom dollar they're talking about you on Facebook. They're talking about your staff. And they're talking about your clients. And they're posting pictures of themselves and their personal life that might affect your business. So can you control the use of what somebody says on Facebook in your handbook? Yes, you can. Know how to do it? We'll help you. Can you say that they can't have your clients as friends on Facebook? Yes. Can you say, you can say what industry you are in, but you can't say what company you work for? Yes. Okay, so we can help you with that. So a social networking policy, no blogs, etc. And it doesn't just say Facebook, it says every social networking policy. And just a really good top tip here for you now as well, while we're talking about recording of staff. Do you record your staff on CCTV? If you're saying yes to me at this moment, you've got to put it in your handbook, otherwise it's illegal. You've got to let your staff know. Put it in your handbook. Do you record them on tracking devices? Do you record them on their sat-navs? Do you record them on their smartphone? If you do, you have to let them know that you do. Otherwise, it's illegal. I'm sure my husband has me tracked, because every time I go into Tesco's, he says, where are you? And I say I'm in Tesco's, and he says, you're not shopping again, are you? So I'm sure my mobile phone is on tracking, and it's all at the benefit of my husband. So anyway, do you have provisions in place for flood, fire, snow, volcanic ash roadworks, credit crunch, cancelled contracts? Have you got something in place that you can utilise that helps you save your business? Have you got a layoff procedure or shortage of work procedure in place? And it's really relevant at the moment. It's so sad, these floods, but it's not the first tragedy we've had that hits businesses. It's another one. We've had foot and mouth, 1999. Remember that? It affected lots of businesses, not just farming here. We're talking about, look, the Lake District, for example. We're talking about all those little shops and businesses that people, tick by quite nicely on, that are affected by foot and mouth because people couldn't come and visit the area. Now, have you got a layoff procedure in place? Because you've got staff that have worked there for years that are still one paying. So no, you don't get the government shouting about this, do you? Business respite for businesses. Get a layoff procedure in place. Get a shortage of work procedure in place. Put it in your handbook. If you haven't got it written down, you can't use it. And I tell you what, you'll wish you had it one day. What if roadworks turn up outside your shop? What if there's a flood? What if there's a fire? What if there's snow? What if there's volcanic ash? What if you just lost your biggest contract? You know, it's a temporary measure. Get it in your handbook. And then, what is the hot topic in tribunal? Look, there's 76 complaints in tribunal. Unfair constructive dismissal, they're the most common ones. Then you'll get automatically unfair for protected reasons. But the hot topic, as I said to you, is the working time regulations, illegal deductions from salary, and there's also hot tweets at the moment, things that are trending, 0-hour contracts, Vince Cable's highlighting them. Used in the right way, they're fantastic. We can help you use them in the right way. Used in the wrong way, you're going to fall foul of the law. End of. We can talk about flexible working. In spring this year, there's major changes with flexible working. Don't be frightened. We'll help you manage that. But also at the same time, and the requests as well. People requesting it. Anybody can request flexible working come spring. No date is yet. But we'll let you know how to handle that so you're not frightened. You know what letters to write. And then we've got the SSP and the abolishment of claiming that. We've got that on the 6th of April. So how did you know about that? How do you know that's going to affect you? Have you concentrated on sickness and absenteeism within your workforce? Because if you haven't, we can help you with that, with staff appraisal systems, KPIs, sickness reporting systems. So you've got to think about all that. So also, now, we're going to talk about here other reasons why the other things that you should have in place. You know, we've spoken about dependence leave, we've spoken about suitability, we've spoken about health, data protection, flexible working. You know, the biggest one that I'm going to talk about now is something really that you have to take seriously and you really have to prepare for this, and it's pensions. I am doing face-to-face events with people, and with experts on pensions. And the word on the street, okay, is there are big fines out there now with names that I can't tell you, but household names, large companies that have got it wrong. They haven't rolled it out correctly. The three major changes, the three major things you've got to look out for in employment law here are your workforce status. You think you've generally got somebody who's self-employed because your accountant's told you. You find out really by the arm of the law that they're not self-employed, they're actually an employee. So we've got to check your workforce status to make sure who's eligible for auto-enrolment. Second thing is for you, you've got to check your staging dates, haven't you? You've got to go on the staging date website and don't prepare just a year in advance, prepare more than a year in advance. ASDA have just gone through this process. They're saying a year wasn't enough for them. You're talking, they've got a whole team that helps them. You haven't. They said a year's not enough to prepare. They're saying they needed at least a further 4 months on top of that year to prepare. So you should be looking at this now. Don't leave it to the last minute. Pensions, state in the main terms, as I mentioned earlier, needs to be changed. The handbook needs to be changed. You need to know how to roll out. You need to check your workforce status. Tell you what, start preparing now. If you need any help, you want to come to an up-to-date presentation that I'm doing, get in contact with me. My email address is available at the end. And then alongside that, a whistleblowing policy. And then we can help you with restrictive covenants. We can help you with garden leave and exit interviews. These are all protective things that you can have in place. So why would you outsource at all? Well, large businesses have the luxury of in-house departments, you know, finance departments, HR departments, health and safety, IT, etc. Small businesses do not have the resources to employ individuals to take responsibility for these areas. And the average cost of an HR professional employee, even part-time, is £15,000 per annum. I don't know if you're surprised by that. Most small businesses already outsource their finance department, their tax, their PAYE, national insurance to an accountant or a payroll service. You pay insurance on your washing machine, on your mobile phone. People take that more seriously than they do their own business. Very few SMEs will design their own websites. They outsource it. Why aren't we thinking about outsourcing HR? It's actually costs a fraction of employing in-house professionals, and also it's a fraction of the cost if you get it wrong. So what are the facts? If you are lucky to have an HR department, they will provide you with a one-stop shop for employees' questions, concerns, benefits, recruitment, pensions, training, grievances, dismissals, etc. The list is absolutely endless. The managers within your company will use HR for the place to go for help with retention, issues, capability. And HR are dependent on more now than ever and expected to have the answer for everything. So with changes in employment law now happening monthly, it really is harder to keep up to date with everything and at the same time please everybody within the company. It's a critical function, and it's not surprising that nowadays an estimated 50% of large companies outsource all of some of their HR needs. So let's have a look why they do. Well, firstly, it frees up owners and proprietors time and allows them to concentrate on their own tasks. Listen, when I deal with companies, and my speciality is, it's not my speciality, it's just the area that I love the most is small to medium-sized businesses. Those are the people, like the hairdressers on the high street, like the barbers, like the pub owners, like the shop owners that are, and the dentist and the doctors, they're the people that own the business, but they are actually the business themselves. When do they have the time to produce HR letters? When do they have the time to keep up to date with employment law, changes, trends, handbooks, rolling it out, implementation processes, letter writing, recruitment? The list is endless. So, and if you think one disciplinary can take up to a week away from the business, with many people getting involved, isn't it, you know, and many not knowing what they're doing, you can see how it can get wrong and go wrong at the earliest stages. It also saves you money. You know, if you are lucky enough to have an effective HR department, it does cost money to run, but even the most experienced HR experts use solicitors as backup. You know, that's for redundancy, restructure or 2P, and they know that getting it wrong costs a fortune in these cases, so they do look for support. But small businesses don't have the luxury of an HR department, and they try and handle it themselves, and something like 2P or restructure or redundancy can cost them a fortune. It gives you peace of mind anyway. It improves your compliance, you know, and it makes you a great company to work for, and you're relying on someone else to take the burden. It improves recruitment, knowing that you can be taken to tribunal just from an advert now. You can delegate the advert writing. You're using the right documents at the start, from application forms to job descriptions as well. And it makes it a lot less stressful. You have access to the latest tools and technology. You know, imagine a world where you can use audio devices and smartphones to just access your employee files. You know, face fax technology is the way forward. And I know with our HR company and health and safety section, we've worked and we've spent an awful lot of time creating innovative HR technology services. There's nothing like it on the market. You can be honest as well. When you're outsourcing employment law and health and safety, you can be honest about where you want to go. You can be honest about the next steps you'd like to take, and the company will tell you the risks and help you every step of the way. They become an integral part of your company. So many employers consider outsourcing their HR requirements as a way of saving money. It removes time-consuming and routine HR processes. We all need an expert sometimes, so let's think about the reasons why we would. You know, by outsourcing HR, it's not going to stunt the company's growth. It's cost effective, and even the most experienced HR person likes to take advice. Employers aren't usually experienced at writing the contracts, but employment law companies are. They breathe and eat it 24 hours a day, 365 days of the year. And remember, contracts always need updating. And remember, there's a super busy year this year. There was a super busy year last year for legislation. It's going to be even more busier this year. We've got to know the basic rights of employees, you know, and if you don't know that people have got over 80 rights from day one, an employment law company can help you. And also, you could be taken to tribunal, but at least it's the peace of mind knowing that there's somebody there to support you. So, Get the right handbook for the right business, keep up to date with changes, continually update policies, procedures and contracts, advise 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, so you haven't got a sickness issue with getting advice. If you're not confident at drafting letters or communication, they can help you do it. They'll write your adverts, they'll give you free webinars, free training and magazines with up-to-date topics and blogs. You get amazing access to the best HR technology, so things like absence, sickness and things that affect your business are taken seriously. Can you really afford to get it wrong? If you have a support service and choose to be insured and you follow their advice, you'll be insured for the outcome. You have peace of mind and confidence knowing you walk into a tribunal and know that the company defending you has over 30 years knowledge and service protecting the employer. It saves time, it saves stress. And you know what? You take your tax seriously at the end of the day, don't you? So why don't you take employment law issue? I hope that I've helped you today. I hope you feel a bit more secure. I hope I've held your hands a little bit when it comes to employment law. But remember, don't just tick the boxes. Tick the boxes and understand why they're there. It gives you peace of mind at the end of the day, and it's going to keep you ahead of the law before you fall foul of it. Thank you very much for listening to me. I'm Amanda Chadwick. If you'd like to contact me, you can contact me at amanda@peninsula-uk.com. You can get this recording later on today on YouTube and www.youtube.com/PBS Press Office. Thank you very much for listening to me. I hope I've made a big difference for you today, and I hope to speak to you again soon. Thank you very much for listening to me.